Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Did You Know podcast. I'm Trysten Tice.
And I'm Rabbi Ira Brawer, and together we are Did You Know?
And so today we are going to be talking about what is kosher. Is it still applicable today? Do we need to do it? Is it just for Jews? Is it just for Christians? Neither, all of the above. What's going on with kosher? And so that's what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, good. So, the first mention of clean and unclean animals, because kosher is all about what we eat, and God cares about what we eat because He created us. He gave us these bodies, so it makes sense that He would want us to know what things to eat and what things not to eat. So it goes back, the first mention is back in Noah, when God told Noah to gather animals for the ark. We all know of the two of each kind.
Right.
Male and female.
The little boats that I used to have as a little kid with the little animals. Is that true? There were always two of each animal, by the way?
Yeah, according to what it says in Bereshit and Genesis. But there's also a reference to 7 of clean animals.
Okay, right.
And we don't really know in the context what that meant, but apparently Noah did. But if we fast forward to Leviticus, where God, in the context of the covenant with Israel, after they've obviously come out of Egypt, and they're preparing to come in the promised land, although their trip was delayed for 40 years, and he's giving them the law, the commandments. In the commandments themselves, what we call the Torah or the law, the word Torah really just means instructions. And oftentimes it's misunderstood, misapplied what that actually means. And from God's perspective, He gave these instructions to Israel in order for them to know how to live in the context of the covenant that He made with them, to live in right order with the God who loves them and cared for them and brought them out of Egypt and brought them to Himself into the promised land. So we have the Shabbat, as part of that covenant, the feasts and all that, but also these kosher laws are part of that as well. And Leviticus 11 goes into great detail of which animals God said are clean and which animals are unclean. Obviously, the clean animals are suitable for us to eat, and the unclean animals were not suitable to eat.
Right. And so it goes into the whole thing about what is unclean and what is clean. And it talked about the split hooves and eating cud. And so some animals did that and some animals didn't. And that being said, cows had both split hooves and they chewed their own cud.
That's correct.
But then pigs, for example, they have split hooves.
Yeah, they have split hooves, but they don't chew their cud.
Right. So that would make them unclean. And something that's interesting to me, and not to jump around because we'll go back and cover it all. But I always found it fascinating, and I don't know if this has any resemblance. However, I had thought it did, but definitely correct me and let's talk through it if not. But when there was that guy who was possessed by a demon, Jesus sent the demons out into a herd of pigs and then sent them into the lake of fire. Right. So I always wondered in my mind, did He do that because pigs were unclean, and so that's why He chose those animals to send it into? But I don't know if that has a correlation, but it's not like He sent them into cows.
Right. I would say the answer is yes.
Okay.
And also, they weren't Jews.
Oh.
He was in the area in the Galilee that was Gentiles, the 10 cities there, and the guy that he was dealing with there, that were the demonic activity. Yeah. The ones that were keeping the pigs, that wouldn't have been Jews. Because Jews would not have been herding pigs. It's interesting that today in Israel there are farms that raise pigs, but they must be off the ground.
What? What do you mean?
Yeah, they have to be on stands off the ground.
All the pigs are on a little platform?
Yes, so that they don't defile the ground.
Wow. And so why do they have
now obviously the people that raise pigs are not kosher, they're not Orthodox.
All right.
Right, and so I guess there's some accommodation that the rabbis and the government has made to allow them with that condition,
right,
that they're not touching the ground.
Yeah, and even that being said, and I want you to like also go into reading about Leviticus 11 and talking about it all, but I also know that scientifically, biologically, pork is less like good for your body than eating chicken or meat or red meat. Like, it's just dirty. It's just not good for your body.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever been around pigs,
they're gross.
You know,
they're disgusting.
They eat anything that's given to them.
Yeah.
They're not grazing out in the field. They're in a pen, and then whatever they throw at
rolling
them,
around in the mud, just eating whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So just by common sense, we can look at it and go, "Oh, these are not good things to eat."
Yeah.
And you mentioned scientifically, it is true that not just the pig, but of these other animals that don't chew their cud or don't have split hoofs are biologically bad for us to eat. Right?
And also leading into that with what you eat, like I've always heard it said, when you eat something, you're also eating what that thing ate. So if they're eating all this junk, you're eating all that junk.
Right. And so starting with the animals, the four-legged animals, right? It says these are things that you may eat. I'm reading from Leviticus 11. Whatever has a split, divided hoof, and chews its cud among the animals that you may eat. Nevertheless, you shall not eat of those that only chew a cud or have a split hoof. The camel, though it chews its cud, does not have a divided hoof, hoof is unclean. The coney chews its cud, does not have a divided hoof. The hare, the rabbit, right? Though it chews its cud, though it chews the cud, does not split the hoof, so it's unclean. The pig, though it has split divided hoof, does not chew its cud, so it is unclean. You are not to eat meat from them, nor are you to touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you. Now, one thing it doesn't say in here about these animals is that they are all carnivores. They all eat other dead animals. And in the context of this whole thing, what's important, and we'll read the last part in a bit as well, is God wanted Israel to make a distinction between that which was holy and that which was profane, that which is life-giving and that which is death, that which is sin, or that which is pure and that which is sin. And so the four-legged animals, then from the waters of the sea, you may eat whatever has fins and scales. Within the waters and the seas and the rivers, those you may eat. But any that do not have fins and scales in the seas or the rivers, among those that swarm on the waters, or among any living creatures that are in the waters, they are loathsome to you. They are to be detestable to you. You shall not eat meat from them, and you shall detest their carcasses. Whatever has neither fins nor scales in the waters, that is detestable to you. So, as an example, shrimp and lobster.
Yeah, they're on the bottom.
They're ground feeders.
Yeah, the floor. So they're eating like the dead, the feces, all the things that are falling down. So you're going to start eating all the dead and all the gross things.
Right. And again, scientifically or medically speaking, these animals are proven to be not good for you.
Wow.
Pig, right? Now, we don't think about eating camel. We don't think maybe some people eat rabbit or some of these other four-legged creatures, and we just go, but pig is in the same category as all these others, and it's not healthy for you. Same with these bottom feeders, catfish. A lot of people, especially in the South, when I met my wife, Gloria, she's from the South, and that she grew up with that stuff.
Yeah.
And so one time we went to visit, her family, and they were doing a catfish fry or something, and she was like, we don't eat. What do you mean you don't eat catfish? Well, it's not kosher. What do you mean? We grew up,
Yeah.
It's like, it's so part of the culture, and so shrimp and lobster. For a lot of people, it's like, how can you not eat it? It's so good.
Yeah.
I used to eat it too.
Wait.
Before.
Yes, I don't want to forget my question, because I wasn't even thinking about this until you brought that up. But there's a verse, and I don't know exactly where it is, so I'm going to look and find it. But it talks about when the disciples were sent out, when someone invites you into their home, eat what they give you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And so I don't know to what extent those all relate and everything, but for example, as a Jewish person that's maybe watching this, or Christian, really both, but has a conviction against eating pork or unclean food, but then they go and stay at someone's house. In your situation, like it wasn't necessarily that you're a missionary, but you want to honor Gloria's parents and her family. So if I was like visiting someone and I felt convicted to not eat pork, but then they welcome me into their home and there's pork, am I just supposed to say, I don't want that, I can't eat that?
Well, I think it depends on what my answer would be. Personally, I would say we don't eat pork or shellfish.
Okay.
When someone invites you for dinner, especially nowadays, because everyone's got, not everyone, but a lot of people have, allergies to this or to that, or gluten-free or whatever. So typically, when we invite someone over for dinner, we ask, do you have any restrictions? Some people don't eat meat because of other reasons, not because necessarily kosher. So vegetarians or whatever. So I would tell people if we get invited for dinner, especially if it's someone that doesn't know us that well, that may not know that we keep we call it biblical kosher. I would say, just by the way, we don't eat, most people, we don't eat pork or shellfish or lobster. Like most people say, oh yeah, I know, or okay, thanks for telling me. So I think particularly in our culture today, it's legitimate, and I think that if you have that conviction, it's okay to say, hey, by the way, I know I really appreciate you inviting us for dinner, but we don't eat this, and this.
Is it wrong to not have that conviction? Because I'm just
let's lay this foundation first,
lay the foundation,
and we'll come back to that, because I think that's a very good
I have
question.
a lot in my head about lay the foundation.
No, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, I'm sure a lot of people listening or would watch this would go, wait a second, how does that apply today?
Yeah.
We'll get there. Trust me, folks, right?
I'm with you, honestly. I want him also to get to the end.
So we got to the four-legged creatures. We got to the ones in the water, and then there's the birds. Among the birds you shall detest the following. They are not to be eaten. They are loathsome: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any raven. Now, as we're talking about this, people are going, no, of course, I'm not going to eat an eagle. I'm not going to eat a vulture. But again, these are animals that eat other animals. Yeah. Right?
You wouldn't eat a vulture, but then you'll eat a pig, or you'll eat other animals that do eat the dead things. But a vulture, it's like, oh, I wouldn't do that.
Right. The owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hooper, and the bat, okay? All flying insects that walk on all fours are detestable. You may eat from yet you may eat from all winged creeping things that go on all fours, which have legs above their feet, that which are to hop the earth. You may eat from any kind of locust. Think about locusts, right?
John the Baptist.
When you think about John the Baptist, right, he ate the locust. Any kind of cricket, grasshoppers, you may eat. But all winged creeping things that have 4 feet are loathsome to you. Okay, so he goes on to a lot of others. I'm not going to get into all of that. But here's the importance, the kind of the summary, verse 44. For I am Adonai your God. Therefore, sanctify. Let me back up. You are not to contaminate yourselves with any creeping thing that crawls, nor make yourselves unclean with them or defiled by them. So if we eat these unclean things, according to this, we are defiling ourselves. And the principle behind it, which is not explicit, but I think it's pretty implied, especially from the passage I'm going to read in a moment, is that these are things that eat dead things.
Okay.
And that would defile us because of the death, because God is about life, right? So he says, verse 44, for I am Adonai your God, therefore sanctify yourselves, means set yourselves apart. That's what that word sanctify means. And be holy, be kadosh is the Hebrew word. For I am holy, God is holy. You're not to defile yourselves with any kind of creeping thing that moves on the earth. For I am Adonai, I brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, for I am holy. Now, why does he mention, for I am the God who brought you out of Egypt? Because this notion of sanctification, of holiness, is being set apart. And when he brought Israel out of Egypt, it was to sanctify them, to set them apart from the depravity and the life that was in Egypt, and to have them be free. For I, the Lord your God, am holy. Therefore you should be holy, for I am holy. This is the Torah of the animal, the bird, every living creature that moves in the waters, and every creature that creeps on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living thing that may be eaten and the living thing that may not be eaten. Okay? So this is the foundation of the what we call the kosher laws.
Okay. So there's laid out. And like you said, you kind of skipped over and glazed over a couple things. So for people that are watching that are like, I want to keep kosher, I don't know how, I don't know what that even means. It's all there in Leviticus 11.
The basis for it is Leviticus 11.
Okay.
So this is what I would call biblical kosher.
Okay.
These things are okay to eat, animals, these are not okay.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you talk to a Jewish person today about kosher, it means a lot more.
Yeah, so that being said, there's a couple of things. I want to touch on that for a second. It means a lot of different things for people that keep kosher today. My cousins are Orthodox Jewish, and so they have 2 fridges, and one is for meat and one is for dairy. They have 2 stovetops. They have 2 dishwashers and 2 sinks and 2 sets of silverware. Everything is split for meat and dairy, and they don't eat like a cheeseburger is unheard of. You would not have a cheeseburger because it's meat and dairy. And I think there's like a couple hours have to go between before you can eat dairy before you have meat.
Yes. So let me elaborate on that aspect. Okay. So just like a lot of things that we talked about already about the Shabbat, there wasn't that much written what work is. So the rabbis added or expanded on and added, these are things that are permissible on Shabbat, these are not, and so on and so on. So we talked about that in a previous episode. Same thing with these laws that, elaborate on these things. So there is a verse in Deuteronomy where God tells the Israelites that they are not to boil the calf in its mother's milk. However, in the context of that verse, it has to do with pagan practices. In other words, don't do the things that the pagans do.
Yeah.
Because they sacrifice animals and they do all these things to their gods, counterfeiting what God called Israel to do. And they have this practice of boiling the calf in its milk, in its mother's milk. So from that one verse, the rabbis deduced that meant that we're not to mix meat with milk. Meat products with dairy products. However, right off the bat, I'm going to say, Abraham, when the 3 visitors came to him, in fact, it's in this week's Torah portion, they came to visit him, and we believe, and one of them was actually God himself in the flesh, right? And he went about creating a meal for them, and it says that he actually told his servants to feed them the curds, which is from milk, cheese, and the meat that they were going to animal. So he fed them milk and meat together to God.
Really?
Read it, Leviticus, Genesis 18.
Hold on. We're going to pull this up because I never heard that. Genesis 18. He fed them milk and meat, but yet people that are Orthodox or keeping kosher say that that's wrong?
Well, they would say that was before God gave the law, the Torah, or they would say, well, they would add something to it that would contradict what it actually says, which is very common in rabbinic Judaism, where it is like, wait a second, their interpretation now actually contradicts what actually the plain meaning of what is written.
Guys, this is confirmed.
Okay,
in Genesis 18:7, then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree.
Right. So if Abraham, our father, Avraham Avinu, is how he's referred to in Judaism, would eat that and serve it to one who is the Lord himself, apparently, according to later scripture. You can read it as well. When they walk to Sodom, and God has this discussion with Abraham about whether he should destroy Sodom, and they have that negotiation. If there's 50 men, if there's 45, if there's 40 righteous, et cetera, should I destroy Sodom? So if Abraham served milk and meat to God himself,
that's so interesting.
Would it be all of a sudden later on forbidden? I don't think
Right.
so. So again, but that's what our rabbis deduce from that verse. And so all the kosher laws, the quote, kosher laws that most Jewish people think of today go back to that. Milk and meat separate. So your cousins. Yeah, so typical Orthodox Jews today have two sets of dishes. I grew up with this, so I know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, two sets of dishes. One's for meat products, one's for dairy products, and two refrigerators.
Yeah.
Right, for the food, separate all that. And you're right, you don't eat milk and meat together. Never have a cheeseburger, and you can eat dairy first and then follow with meat. But if you have meat, you have to wait, I can't remember, 2 hours.
Because it digests different? Is that
the
thought? Okay.
Yeah. Now, there may be some hygienic things with that, milk and meat, I don't know. But that's the basis of it. And so from that, also, how meat is slaughtered, or how an animal is slaughtered.
Right. It has to be in a humane way.
Yeah, it has to be done by a authorized shochet, is the term, slaughterer.
And then you can go to like a market or a grocery store, and like the way you get meat, it would be called kosher meat. Or
so there's a whole section, kosher meat, how it's slaughtered, kosher products, has to have a rabbinic stamp, kosher restaurant, has to be inspected, all that. Honestly, it's a racket.
Yeah, wow.
It's a whole money racket.
Oh.
It's a whole money racket.
Okay, explain that.
Well, if you open a restaurant and you call yourself kosher, you have to pay money to a rabbi who specializes in certifying that you're kosher. I have a friend who had a bakery, and he had to pay thousands of dollars. He wanted to have a kosher bakery. He was Orthodox, and he wanted to, cater to Orthodox Jews. So he made the challah, the Jewish bread, and he made other things, and he had a kosher kitchen. But he had to pay thousands of dollars, literally. It was almost like extortion, to this rabbinic rabbi who does, that's what he does. He certifies, yes, you're kosher, and you have to be inspected every so often that your food is kosher. But if you misstep something, you have the wrong person working there that's not Orthodox, or they have all kinds of rules for that.
Wow.
You lose that certificate.
You have to do it again?
You lose your business. Or you have
to pay thousands all over again.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, and I want to go back really quick because you mentioned...
So it's been but just to say that it's been taken to a whole level that God never intended for it.
Right. It was really just like keep yourselves pure and clean, and to show that distinction, like you were saying, between sinful and purified, walking with God, not walking with God, making a distinction to be set apart. And I love that because I think that we're talking about keeping kosher and keeping those laws that God laid out, but I think being set apart is something that's laid through all of Scripture in so many areas, to just be set apart for God and be like his chosen people. Even Romans 12:2, not necessarily relating to food, but it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." It talks about in 1 Peter 2:9, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." So God is constantly wanting us to be set apart, chosen by him, and take care of ourselves. He's laying out these laws and these regulations, not to sit there and restrict us from things, but just to be mean, but to restrict us because he knows it's for our good.
Right. So now let's go after a sacred cow. Not to use a mixed metaphor there.
Okay.
What's the sacred cow? Well, in some circles of Judaism, in some circles of Christianity.
Wait. Can I guess? Is it the heifer? The golden heifer?
No.
Oh. I'll get back to you.
No. In some circles of Christianity, the sacred cow is the kosher laws have been done away with because of the vision that Peter had.
Okay, that was my next thing I wanted to talk about.
See, I read your mind.
You did.
Yeah. So why do I call it a sacred cow? Well, because there's some Christians, unfortunately, I believe, that are very adamant. No, we can eat pork now. We can eat these things because of what
the law's lifted. It was in the past.
Yes,
Look at what happened in the vision.
Yeah, so I want to read it if it's
Please
okay.
read it.
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to follow along with you actually.
Yeah, this is Acts chapter 10.
Okay.
A very important portion, but not because of food. It's a very important passage, but not because of food, but because of God revealing himself to the Gentiles, through revealing Yeshua to the Gentiles. Okay, Acts chapter 10. Now, in Caesarea, which is a city, northern Israel on the coast, was actually the capital of the Roman legion during the time of the Roman occupation of Israel. Now, in Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian cohort. He was a devout man, revering God with all his household. He gave tzedakah, which means charity, generously to the people and prayed to God continually. So he gave charity to the Jewish people.
Yeah, I want to pause you really quick just in case people are following along. We're reading in the TLV version, which is what? Tree of Life version?
Tree of Life version, so it's a Messianic translation of the New Testament.
Just so that they can be aware to follow along. So,
yeah.
perfect.
When there's Hebraic words, I'll translate them. He was a devout man, and he gave charity, to the Jewish people, and prayed to God continually. Now, of course, I don't know if I need to say this, but the only one God there was no Christianity, there was no churches, there was nothing. There was the God of Israel, Jewish people, and paganism, like the Romans did. Verse 3, about the 9th hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming and saying to him, Cornelius. He stared at him in terror and said, "What is it, Lord?" The angel said to him, "Your prayers and tzedakah, your charity, have gone up as a memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa, call for Simon, also named Peter. He is being entertained as a guest by Simon the tanner, whose house is beside the sea." So just the geography there. As I said, Caesarea is up the coast, on the coast of Israel, on the Mediterranean. Now it'd be about an hour north of Tel Aviv. And then Jaffa is down near Tel Aviv, modern-day Tel Aviv. Okay, Jaffa. Still a city. It's actually incorporated into Tel Aviv. It's called Tel Aviv Jaffa. And it was a port city on the coast. So there's two port cities there. The north was Caesarea, and the south is Jaffa. So when the angel speaking to him had left, he called two of his servants and a soldier from among those attached to his command. After he explained everything to them, he sent to Jaffa. Verse 9, the next day, as the soldiers were traveling and approaching the city, Peter went up to the rooftop to pray about the 6th hour, which was about noon. Now he became very hungry and he wanted to eat, but while they were preparing something, he fell into a trance. And he saw the heavens opened and something like a great sheet coming down, lowered by its four corners to the earth. In it were all sorts of four-footed animals and reptiles and birds of the air. So what do we think about? We think about Leviticus 11, right?
Yeah.
The animals, four-footed animals, reptiles, and birds of the air.
I would have, without reading further, I probably would have felt like, oh, okay, four-footed animals. We can eat four-footed animals.
Sure.
There's birds that we can eat. Birds of the air. Are there birds of the air that we can eat?
Yeah, there's
Chicken's
some birds.
not necessarily a bird of the air, but I think there's some.
Yeah, chicken, duck.
Yeah. I guess I don't know about reptiles, but either way, I don't know that I would.
No, reptiles are.
All reptiles are bad?
Bad, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not clean.
Okay,
not
so
clean.
that would have given it away.
So anyway, the voice came to him saying, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." Now, Peter's reaction tells everything that we need to know. Mm-hmm. Peter said, "Certainly not, Lord, for never have I eaten anything unholy or unclean."
Right. Peter was Jewish. He was a follower of Yeshua.
That's right.
And
observant Jew.
Yep. He's like,
Right.
I've never done that, and I'm not doing that.
Not going to do that. Again, a voice came to him a second time. "What God has made clean, you must not consider unholy." This happened 3 times, and the sheet was immediately taken up to heaven. So now the next verse also is very crucial. Okay, it does not say Peter then went out, found a pig or found a reptile, killed it and ate it.
So that was what I noticed actually right away, is that he never ate it. Like, he didn't.
No.
They had the dialogue about it, so I'm interested in what you'll have to say about it.
Yes. Verse 17, now while Peter was puzzling about what the vision he had seen might mean. Doesn't say, now I can eat all these good things that I've always wanted to eat. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right? It's not about food, as he said, and he's puzzled.
And oftentimes, I don't know if necessarily, but oftentimes God, when he speaks to us, be it a vision or a dream, or says something, he's saying one thing, but it's reflecting and being symbolic of something else.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Maybe it wasn't even about food.
It wasn't about food. So right at that moment, he wakes up. Behold, the men sent by Cornelius found Simon's house and appeared before the gate. So they're knocking at the door.
Wait,
at
go
the
back.
same time.
Who's?
Okay.
Sorry.
Cornelius.
Okay.
Who had the appearance of the angel up at Caesarea.
Okay.
Who told him to go to the house.
Yes.
In Jaffa.
Okay.
So that was the day before, and it took a day to travel to Jaffa because he told, the angel told Cornelius, Gentile, Roman centurion, who was a lover of God of Israel, right? Mm-hmm. Who had the vision that angel told to go,
right,
and visit this house in Jaffa.
Okay.
So
Peter's hungry. He goes
Peter
up,
goes
has
on
his
the
vision,
roof,
goes back down.
has this, and at the same time he's having this vision. He's perplexed as to its meaning.
Okay.
About these unclean animals being let down, and the angel says, "Arise, Peter, kill and eat."
Yeah.
What? He's perplexed, but at the same time, there's the
knocking at
knock
the door.
on the door. I just knocked on
on a plant.
On a plant here, and they're there. Where am I?
We're at verse 17.
Yeah. Now, while Peter was puzzling about what this vision he had seen mean, behold, the men sent by Cornelius found Simon's house, appeared before the gate. They called out and began to ask whether Simon, also called Peter, was staying in this place as a guest. Mm-hmm. So Cornelius and his entourage, other soldiers that apparently also believed in the God of Israel, are sent to this house, and they're inquiring, is this the house that Peter is staying at? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, while Peter was mulling over the vision, the Ruach said to him, "Look here, the 3 men are looking for you. Get up, go downstairs, and go with them without hesitating, because I myself have sent them." Going down to the men, Peter said, "Here, I'm the one you're looking for. What is the reason for your coming?" And they said, I'm in verse 22, "Cornelius, a centurion, a righteous and God-fearing man, well spoken of by all the Jewish people, was directed by a holy angel to summon you to his house and to hear a message from you." So they're doing, these Gentiles are being obedient to what they were told. Go find this house, knock on the door, and tell them that they're supposed to hear a message from a guy named Peter.
That's so crazy.
Right?
Wow.
Now, for a Gentile to come into the house of a Jew was a pretty big deal. So Peter invited them to be his guests. The next day he got up and went with them, and some of the brothers from Joppa accompanied him. So now he goes up to Caesarea, to their house. Cornelius was waiting for them and had called together his relatives and close friends. I misspoke a little bit. So it wasn't Cornelius that appeared at the door. Cornelius sent these guys to fetch
his entourage. So Cornelius wasn't actually with them, but his people went.
Cornelius stayed in Caesarea.
Okay.
Right? And he sends his entourage to fetch Peter,
bring him back to his house.
Right.
All right. Cornelius was waiting.
Right. So Cornelius is waiting there, and as Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter pulled him up, saying, "Stand up too, I'm just a man."
That's so funny. I didn't know that was the next sentence, so I'm just like reading like with it, and I was like, "Oh, that's not good." Like he's worshiping Peter, and then Peter was like, "Don't do that." Right. I'm like, "Good job, Peter. Good call." Okay, moving on.
So talking with him, Peter went inside and found many people gathered. So Cornelius had gathered a crowd of his family and friends, and
Cornelius,
they're all
Mr.
Gentiles.
Popularity over
they're all
here.
Gentiles.
Okay.
He said to them, "You yourselves know that it is not permitted for a Jewish man to associate with a non-Jew or to visit him. Yet God has shown me," now this is the whole key to the vision, "yet God has shown me that I should not call no one unholy or unclean."
Wait. Pause. Put a pin in that. So he found out, we're going to keep reading, but where we're at, he determined, it says, "Yet God has shown me that I should call no one unholy or unclean." So it wasn't about food, but he somehow got that divine revelation that God was actually talking about people aren't clean or unclean, but the food isn't what he was talking about.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I didn't know that till now.
Yes. Why? Because, and he says it right here, "You yourself know it's not permitted for a Jewish man to associate with a non-Jew or visit him," because Gentiles were considered unclean by Jews.
It was all about people.
It was all about people. Why were non-Jews considered unclean? You have any idea?
Non-Jews were considered unclean because they weren't grafted in Yeshua yet. So okay.
What did they eat?
Oh, pig and pork.
And?
Shellfish.
Yes. And who did they worship?
The pagan gods.
Yes. So
I am trying to come up with some fancy answer.
No,
I know simple. What it is. And
the answer is right in front of you, right?
They weren't grafted in yet. And you're like, what are you talking about? They ate pork, Trysten. Oh, duh.
Yes.
Okay.
They were considered unclean by their lifestyle.
That's crazy.
What they ate, what their practices, their sexual immorality, all those things, right?
Yeah.
And here Peter, now think about how radical this thing was that God was telling Peter to do. So he gives him the vision of the animals. Peter is perplexed. He doesn't know what it means. Then he gets the knock on the door from Cornelius's friends or his, underlings from the army, telling him that Cornelius had this vision. We worked for Cornelius. He had this vision. We were told to come here. We were told to get you. And Peter's like being told by the angel, go with them. Not knowing what the purpose was. Now he's in the home of a Gentile. And he only is doing it because the angel told him, because God told him to go.
Wait, okay, I have a question though.
Yes.
Because I was all on board and I'm still all on board.
Okay.
Now I'm not sure because I'm thinking back again. So in verse 14, but Peter said, "Certainly not, Lord, for never have I eaten anything unholy or unclean." Again, a voice came to him a second time, "What God has made clean, you must not consider unholy." So could it be that God is calling everything, like there's no such thing anymore as clean and unclean? If he's saying don't call anything.
So this idea of not associating with Gentiles was not God's idea, even back before. It was considered that way because of the rabbinic, the rabbis' teachings.
So it was never God's teachings to have Jews and Gentiles be
because
separated.
even in the temple, there was the court of the Gentiles. So you see this thread throughout the history, in the biblical history, even going back to the Exodus, there was a mixed multitude that came out with the Jews, with the Israelites from Egypt. They were Egyptians.
So you're taking the stance that there's no way that he was talking about food at all. It couldn't have been both people and food. Like, don't call anything unclean or clean.
Correct.
That God is saying.
Had nothing to do with food. Had nothing to do with the food.
Wow.
Had all to do with people.
Which, if I'm thinking about it, like, I don't know, man. But if I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I just feel like God is always more focused on people than food. But I feel like continue on because there's more.
Because, so he came without objection. When I was sent for, I asked then, what is the reason why you sent for me? Verse 29. So even up to this moment, Peter, who obviously he's trying to be obedient, right? I mean, he's one of the disciples, one of the 12. And yet he's not sure what's going on, but he's being obedient. So he has the vision. He knows it's not about the food, but yet these guys come and he travels with them up to Caesarea, which was a bit of a schlep. Now jump in the car, go from Tel Aviv up to, it's an hour, 45 minutes, but it was probably at least a full day's journey. And then verse 30, Cornelius declared, 4 days ago at this hour I was praying the mincha afternoon in my house. Suddenly a man stood in front of me in shining clothes. He says, Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your charity, your tzedakah, remembered before God. Therefore send to Jaffa, ask for Simon, who's also called Peter. He is staying in the house of Simon the tanner by the sea. So I sent for you immediately, and you have been kind enough to come. Now then, we're all here before God to hear all that you have been commanded by the Lord. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, I truly understand that God is not one to show favoritism.
Wait. So Cornelius and his household, they weren't Jewish?
No.
So none of these people were Jewish?
No.
So basically,
that's the whole point of the story.
I'm like breaking out. This is crazy. Guys, are you getting this? This is crazy. So basically, Peter's Jewish. All of these people, Cornelius and all of them, aren't Jewish.
Correct.
But an angel came to Cornelius and said, I'm sending Peter because he has a message for you.
Yes.
And then Peter came and gave him the message that basically you guys aren't unclean anymore. Like we're all going to be kumbaya, be friends.
Right. Yes. And he doesn't get it. This is a really important piece. He doesn't just go, no, God, I'm not going to go with these guys. They're Gentiles. I don't go with Gentiles. He goes with them, and he doesn't understand the purpose until this moment where he hears Cornelius' testimony of being told, of having an appearance of an angel.
Okay, Rabbi, no, we got to keep reading. We have to keep reading.
Okay, I know, we're running out of time.
No, not even time. I'm excited.
Okay, but Peter opened his mouth. Okay, I truly understand. So in this moment now, Peter's understanding. God is not one to show favoritism, but in every nation, the one who fears him and does what is right and acceptable to him. And does what is right is acceptable to him. You know the message he sent to the children of Israel, proclaiming peace, shalom, through Messiah Yeshua. He is Lord of all. You know the message that is spread throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee, after the immersion that John proclaimed. So there was no secret that the gospel, side note here, there was no secret that the gospel, this message of Yeshua, had gone out. And Cornelius
and
probably heard
Jesus. For
Jesus,
clarification.
The message that Jesus had preached, but up to this point, it was only for Jews.
Whoa. The gospel was only for Jews?
Yes.
True, because it says he came first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles.
Yeah, and even when he came to that woman at that time, that was a unique case.
No, it's all making sense. It's all making sense.
So this is now laying the foundation, and maybe in another episode we'll go to Acts 15.
Oh, please.
Where this now becomes codified And so,
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
What is codified?
It means it becomes entrenched as God's word.
It's like legit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for people who aren't of vocabulary.
Yeah, sorry. It becomes part of the doctrine
for
of what
real.
it is. For real.
Okay.
Yeah, let's say it's for real.
Sure, it's for real.
Has spread throughout Judea, beginning from Galilee after the immersion that John proclaimed. You know how God anointed Yeshua of Nazareth, Jesus, with the Holy Spirit and power, how he went about doing good, healing all who were oppressed by the devil, because God was with him. So basically what's happening right now in this moment is Peter is preaching the gospel to Cornelius.
So that was really ultimately the message probably that God was having them send. Like the message that God was showing to Peter through that was there's no such thing as like unclean and clean people. Like we're all going to be one under the name of Yeshua the Savior, and you need to preach them that message.
Yeah. So backing up a bit, and it's important to know that the Gentile, because there were Gentiles, they were called righteous Gentiles. Okay. And that's a technical term, which meant that they were welcomed in the synagogues. So there were synagogues throughout Israel at this time. Okay, that's another probably good topic for an episode. Where the synagogues come from. So there was the temple where the sacrifices were given.
Yeah, probably the Holy of Holies.
So there was the temple where it was the center of Jewish life in Jerusalem. But there were Gentiles. There was the court of the Gentiles that were allowed to come. There was the court of the women, and there was the court of Israel, and so on and so on. So Gentiles could convert to become Jews through circumcision. It was a difficult process.
Yeah.
And so there were those were called proselytes that actually converted. So there were righteous Gentiles like Cornelius. And
righteous Gentile means they
believed in the God of they believed in the God of Israel.
Oh, okay.
Like we described Cornelius.
Oh, and they weren't pagans or worshiping other gods. They were worshiping the God of it. Okay,
right.
I got it.
Right. So Cornelius was what we'd consider a righteous Gentile. Believed in the God of Israel.
Okay.
His associates, we don't know. They were maybe as well. But he gave money, remember? Gave money to Israel, Jewish people, and so on and so on.
And that makes sense why they'd be welcomed then to go to the temple because they believed in the God of Israel.
Synagogue. Not temple.
Yeah.
Let's make that synagogue.
Okay. I didn't know there would be a difference.
Temple is a modern word applying to houses of worship for Jewish people.
Okay. Yeah. So they would go, he'd be okay and accepted to go to the synagogue. But then people who worship pagan gods or who weren't following the God of Israel, they weren't accepted to go to those.
So all that to say that God's intention has always been for all the nations to know him. So there was always a provision for the Gentiles. Solomon's temple, when he made his dedication to the temple, he even said, and those from the nations who will come to hear, that they also would know about the one true God. See? So there's always this thread throughout the Hebrew scriptures of righteous Gentiles who believed in the God of Israel.
Wow. That
lived amongst them. The foreigner that lives amongst you. They want to celebrate Passover. They had to be circumcised. So there were distinctions that way.
So I think that we should probably just go back to the story really quick, give an overview of it, and then we could go back to kosher. Yeah.
So basically where we left off was Peter is in Cornelius' house and he's proclaiming the good news, which had already, now this is years after Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection. And so the gospel has gone out, and certainly Cornelius probably knew that there was this movement of followers of this rabbi from Nazareth, okay? And so Peter's preaching the good news to him, and it ends with the Holy Spirit falling on these Gentiles.
That's crazy.
Which is a really important piece of this whole story. And I think that would be a great...
Probably for a part 2.
Yeah, we'll come back to that because it's really important.
And that's huge. I don't want to I feel like with where we're at in this episode, it's so important that if we just try and fit everything all in one episode, it might get glazed over. So let's definitely segment into that for the next episode. But I think just to reel it all back together, when it comes to keeping kosher, do you take the stance we should keep kosher, we should not keep kosher, it doesn't matter, God's looking at our heart, what's the bottom line?
This whole story of Cornelius and Peter and the sheet and the unclean animals is all really just to say is that the principles that God established back then of what was good for us to eat and what is not for us to eat, I believe are still important to us. So is it like, well, am I going to, am I sinning if I eat pork? No, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say I think that everyone, Jew and Gentile, should consider the validity of what it means that God laid these things out. Now, God cares about our bodies. He cares about our health. So obviously there's a lot of other things that, junk food and sugar and
health and food,
just generally in health, that because our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. But to come back to what we really started to originally, what we started with was, I think that we
should keep kosher.
Should keep that the biblical kosher.
Yes, not the rules on top of the rules.
Exactly.
Biblical kosher.
I would advocate for biblical kosher for all of us.
Yeah.
As a means of health and why God laid it out, and as a picture of holy and unclean.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to think about. I mean, I don't know if it's wrong to say that I don't have a conviction about eating pork, but now after having this conversation, I wonder if I will. And I feel like I probably will see bacon and sausage and be like, I don't want to eat that now that I know and I'm aware of it. When you know better, you can do better. But yeah, in the past, I haven't really felt convicted about it. But regardless, I know that from a health perspective, it's better for me. And if I want to honor my body and take care of it, I don't want to fuel it with animals that are eating dead animals. Like I want to fuel it properly so that I'm energized and I'm feeling good and I'm looking good. Like I just want to do what I know that God says is best. So yeah, I think that should be amen. That should be our takeaway for all of us, that we all want to honor our bodies and take care of it. But I think when it comes to you guys with keeping kosher, not keeping kosher, should I, shouldn't I, again, prayer is so important. We did walk through the text. I think hopefully this brought some clarity. It definitely did for me. So if you're anywhere where I was in it with being super uncertain, this brought a lot of clarity to me, even in what Rabbi Ira walked through in the text. But yeah, look into that yourself, read through it, see how you feel about it. And I don't know, I think if you're not willing to sacrifice it, that's also more of a concern, because it's like, why aren't you willing to give it up so much? There's so many other options. Like, why are we going to toe the line with sin, or is it not sin, or is it okay, is it not okay? If you're already having a wrestle, I mean, I don't know, that's just my stance in everything in life. If I'm wrestling it so much, why am I wrestling it? Maybe I should just let it go and see how I'm feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think that it's a very personal thing.
Yeah. Like, why do we want to toe the line? Like, why do we want to get as close to sin or as close to is it okay as possible?
Yeah, that's true. And if God put it in there, why did he put it in there?
True.
For us to just say, oh, disregard that because that was in the past.
Or like, oh, culture doesn't do that anymore. That was an old times thing.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
no, it wasn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this has been good.
This has been good.
Yeah.
Do you want to say goodbye to people?
Yeah, listen, for those of you listening or watching, if you have comments, questions, we welcome those, and let's all learn together more about what God has to say about these things. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and did you know?
Yep, and did you know? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if this was a blessing to you, because that just helps with the support end of things. And we'll also be posting it on Spotify and Apple, so you could rate this 5 stars and comment anything below. All right, thanks. Bye.
Hey everyone, really excited to share about a book that I wrote, been working on for the last year and a half, and it's finally came out recently, and it's called An Atheist, a Drug Dealer, and a Rabbi, and that's me. And it's really, the subtitle is A Redemption Story from Generation to Generation. It's got a story of my life, some family stories from generations back, and really hopefully an encouragement to all who read it about what God is able to do to take an atheist and a drug dealer and bring them to a place of faith and walking with God. The book is available at Barnes & Nobles and on Amazon. You can go to Amazon and put in my name, and it'll pop up and anywhere where books are sold. And be happy to hear your comments or questions about it as well.